Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast with your hosts, Reese Downing and Jacob Workman.
What's going on, guys? It is TNT Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast, combo edition, NFL and NCAA. We are going to lead this episode off with some NCAA news and then jump into some NFL stuff. We'll cover all the picks from last week. We'll cover all the games from last week, and then we'll jump into picks for this week. With me, as always, is co-host and fine citizen, Mr. Jacob Workman. Workman, how's it going, buddy?
Oh, Captain Reese, you know it's always good. The Lions are a Baker Mayfield away from the NFC Championship. So
Insane.
What a crazy world we're in.
Yeah, I know. It was a crazy weekend. Speaking of that, we're bringing back a couple people last week and a couple times this year. We've had both Carter and Scott join the show with us. Taxus, who was with us last week, unfortunately was not able to join, but he did send in his picks, so we're going to cover those later. But do want to say thank you guys again for joining. Carter and Scott, how are you guys doing today?
Good. Trying to stay warm.
Yep,
Yeah,
same here.
Yeah, already starting with talking over. That's what happens when I throw it to multiple people at once. Amateur hour over here. Well, thank you guys again for joining. As always, we appreciate your guys' input. It brings a lot to the show. So can't thank you enough there. Let's dive right in because we do have a long show today. Again, as we just stated, we're gonna jump off with some NCAA news. We had our last episode last week, and shortly after we aired, shit went crazy. So for more on that, I'm going to hand it over to my co-host, Mr. Workman here. Workman, get us caught up on what's been going on the college front.
Yeah, so like you just said, we thought we were done with college, and then the next, I don't even know if it was 12 hours after we finished, Nick Saban retired, and the coaching world went crazy. Of course, the portal's still going crazy because with coaches switches, that gives teams 30 days now to where their portal's open. Basically just became a big mess. So we decided, we probably should throw in this because there was a lot of news that happened. So we'll just start with obviously the big one. Alabama head coach Nick Saban did retire. Replacing him, a guy we talked about quite a bit this year, Washington head coach Kalen DeBoer. He's going to Bama, bringing his offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb with him to Bama, which to me is huge. The fact he could keep Grubb with him, that's a big deal. They've been together for a long time. They've had success everywhere. And then going back to when these guys were at IU, South Alabama head coach Kane Womack is going to be coming in to be Bama's defensive coordinator. So imagine that staff that was at IU under that buffoon, and now one of them is gone and the rest of them are at Alabama. So it's kind of an interesting twist of how the coaching world worked there. With that news, Florida State head coach Mike Norvell and Texas head coach Steve Sarkisian both got extensions because both of them were heavily rumored to be going to Bama and sought after. With Washington becoming open, one of the hottest teams this year, we talked about them all year, Arizona head coach Jed Fish. He's going back up to the Seattle area. He's going to be the new head coach at Washington. He once was with the Seahawks. And filling in Arizona, San Jose State head coach Brent Brennan. Again, another team that's had pretty good success over the last few years. I think he'll do well at Arizona. If I remember right, we talked about him as maybe a potential to get that job last year before Fish got it. So there's a lot of things that go into all of that. A lot of movement. All the Power 5 jobs are now currently filled. The only jobs that are open are the two we just mentioned, San Jose State and South Alabama. So that's pretty much it for the coaching news. You guys got anything on that?
The one thing that I saw that was interesting out of all that stuff is the Fish hire for Washington. I guess Washington has told him that he basically has an unlimited budget to go get the assistant coach that he needs. So I think that could be interesting. I don't know if he's going to be able to pull in maybe a head coach that thinks they may be in the final year of their deal and maybe wanting to step away or something like that. There's still some big names out there from a coaching standpoint. So I'll be interested to see what happens with that. I think Washington is a much more likely destination for maybe a big name to step into an assistant coaching role because of the position that they're in right now with the Big Ten, moving away from the Pac-12. So That was the one thing that stuck out to me with all that stuff going on.
Yeah, I know they're bringing a decent amount of their offensive staff with them, but yeah, it is interesting to see what will end up being the final staff there. Washington, I mean,
is their wide receiver coach going with them?
I believe so.
I think his name. He's a big time.
Yeah, I can't think of his name either. I've read it, but I do believe that he is supposed to be going with them. I know most of the offensive coaches, except for like one, were going.
I could see Jamarcus Shepard. I was going to say I could see him getting an OC job. Maybe even staying in Washington.
Yeah, well, there was a rumor that Shepard was going to go to Bama, but I don't know. Actually, he might be going to Bama. Now that I think about it, with DeBoer, but I don't know. I read so many things over the last few days that I don't remember exactly. But part of me thinks he is going to Bama. So speaking of Bama, we're going to talk. So last week, on our final episode, we talked about how Florida State had one hell of a weekend, just kind of killed the portal. Well, this is I'm going to do just a little quick thing on Alabama guys to Florida State. So running back Roydell Williams, cornerback Earl Little II, offensive guard Terrence Ferguson, wide receiver Malik Benson, and linebacker Sean Murphy are all going from Bama to Florida State. So that's 5 guys Florida State's taking from Bama right there. All will probably come in as starters immediately. And then just today, and I don't really like to go too far into the future when it comes to recruiting, but 2025 4-star defensive end Javion Hilson flipped from Bama to Florida State also. So we're just trying to kick them while they're down a little bit, which I told Reese, I said, it's going to be weird rooting for Bama because I'll never not root for Kalen DeBoer. He's one of my favorite coaches when he was at Fresno. So I'll definitely be rooting for Bama more than I ever have, but it's a little bit of an interesting twist there.
Yeah, definitely not something I had on my Workman bingo card ever in my life that he was going to be rooting for Alabama.
Yeah, I love what DeBoer does, especially with Grubb going with him. Like it's going to be fun to watch. Also, last week we brought up Boise State and all the crazy things that were going on at Boise State and how we talked about how if I had to bet right now, I would put a bet in that they would be one of the teams to make the 12-team invitational next year just because of all the talent that they're bringing in. Well, I think we might have to rival that with Tulane. Tulane brought in from Troy, their head coach, John Sumrall. He's going to be the new head coach at Tulane. Just in the last week, Alabama wide receiver Shaz Preston, Oregon quarterback Ty Thompson, 4-star cornerback Jaden Lewis, which he was committed to Auburn, Kentucky defensive back Jalen Geiger, and USC wide receiver Mario Williams have all committed to Tulane to go to play for John Sumrall. So Tulane's going to be pretty nasty. That's going to be fun to watch also. We know Willie Fritz left, but I think Tulane is going to rebound pretty well. I did check out their schedule today, and I thought it was pretty favorable. They do play Kansas State, which will be an interesting game, and then they do play Memphis, which is a conference game, but it is at home in Tulane. So I think they're going to be another one in our preseason when we're talking about teams to watch out for to potentially make the invitational from the group of 5. I think Tulane's one we're going to have to talk about. You guys have anything on Tulane at all? I know.
I think Tulane has a good chance
definitely going to be loaded.
Yeah, building on what they did this year. They got all those recruits coming in, transfers, kind of building on what they did, and I really like their head coach.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I've got Tulane and Boise as my 2 to kind of watch for right now from the group of 5. I'm not sure who else will be out of that list. That'll be more of a future thing, but as of right now, those are the 2 I'm definitely going into spring ball going to be paying attention to.
It's early right now with
True.
spring ball, there's going to be a whole nother wave of people leaving when jobs open up. So
and we got
it is fun to
the 15-day
out this early.
Definitely. And then we got the 15-day portal from April 15th to April 30th. The portal is going to reopen then too. So who the hell knows what will go on then? Portal's a world. It's hard to follow. I try every day and it's interesting. So some NFL draft news. The probable number 1 pick of the draft, USC quarterback Caleb Williams did officially enter the draft. We got 3 guys from Washington, 2 receivers, Rome Odunze and Jalen McMillan, which we mentioned every single week on the college podcast this year. They are both in the draft. Another guy we talked about, wide receiver, Washington defensive end Braylon Trice entered the NFL draft. And we mentioned last week that Tua's brother was trying to get a waiver for an extra year. Well, it was declined. So Maryland quarterback, Tulia Tungavailoa, he is going to be entering the NFL draft also. So just a little bit of big names in the draft so far there. You guys got anything on any draft guys at all?
No, I mean, unfortunately, I started looking at the draft a little bit more closely now that my team is out of the playoffs. But yeah, we'll see where things shake out. The whole situation with what Chicago is going to do is going to have such an impact on where the rest of this stuff falls into place.
Yep.
I feel like there's been kind of like a momentum shift where it was all in for Caleb Williams, and then towards the back half of the season, especially the last like 3 or 4 games, there were a lot of rumblings that people are wanting Justin Fields to stay, including a lot of Chicago fans. And now I'm reading that it's going back the other direction again, where a lot of people are wanting them to just hit the reset button and bring in Caleb. So that's going to be the big thing. Unfortunately, I just don't think we're going to see a trade. I mean, is it going to be draft night, or is that going to happen before?
I would assume it will be before draft night. I just want to throw in. So I did see something today. I'm scrolling through my Twitter of 85,000 transfer portal things. So the rumor that I saw today was that the Bears could get the 8th overall pick, trading Justin Fields to the Falcons, and that would give Chicago the 1st, 8th, and 9th pick. Like, to me, why do you not do that? I would do that immediately.
I'd love them in Atlanta.
Well, yeah,
so many weapons. They actually get a coach that knows how to use them,
and get Chicago to where. Well, Atlanta doesn't have a coach yet, but
that's what I'm saying. Art Smith was terrible and didn't know how to use any of his 3 top 10 draft picks. So,
and Belichick did just interview there.
Was that a rumor? Or did they actually?
No, he did.
No, he did. He interviewed.
Yeah, he did interview. But the one thing that I just think the reset is needed. Like, Caleb needs out. I think the Bears need a reset. And if you can go get Caleb Williams and still have the 8th and 9th pick of the draft, that's like,
wasn't there a quote?
Like, why not? Like,
yeah.
Wasn't there a quote from Caleb that said he didn't want to play in Chicago too?
I think that was far fetched. I don't know if it was. Yeah, I don't think that was legit. I saw what you were talking about. But.
QB prospects doing that before, though.
Yeah. Well, and he also was the one that did come out in the middle of the college season and say that whatever team drafted him, he wanted a stake in ownership of the team. So, and no team's going to do that. So,
right.
I mean, I think he got a little above himself with what he's been. So,
he thinks he's Michael Jordan.
Yeah. I mean, he's probably the biggest prospect in the NFL, and I couldn't even tell you since when.
But if that is the case, let's say hypothetically speaking, they do trade Fields to Atlanta for that 8th pick. If I'm Caleb Williams and I'm looking at the roster that they already have in place, like, the only thing I don't really like about the Bears is Eberflus, is if I'm Caleb Williams. So if you can step into a team where you already have a couple weapons and then they go get a Rome Odunze or a Keon Coleman and then add either another interior defensive piece or just add another offensive weapon, like, why would Caleb not want to go test that out?
Yeah, that was my thought too. Like last week when I was saying, like, I didn't know what pick the Bears would get, but in my thing, I said, yeah, trade him and get Caleb and Odunze. Like, I mean, at 1 and 9, you're going to get Caleb and you're going to get Odunze, and pairing that with DJ Moore, that's huge. Like, Caleb Williams going into the NFL with Rome Odunze and DJ Moore, I would be very happy. I mean.
Well, now as a Lions fan, you wouldn't be happy, but
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but still, it's something that situationally it could be much, much worse. I feel like that's a great situation to go into.
But that's the same thing with Fields. If he stays there, you draft Marvin Harrison 1 and then get one of those offensive tackles or something to help Fields out. But then you have to pay Fields too. That's the big thing.
Because he's going to be on the new contract, and 2, I think Caleb's a little bit more of a proven passer than Fields is. Fields was never C.J. Stroud at Ohio State. He was always the runner that could potentially throw the ball. I think he's a much different player. And Caleb, I've watched Caleb quite a bit, and he is basically the second coming of Mahomes with what he does on the field with a better running ability. So I don't know. Caleb to me is a clear-cut number 1. I like Caleb a lot. All right, so done with the NFL draft talk. We've got a long list coming here. At any point after I say something that you guys want to throw something in, go ahead and throw it in. We'll stop and discuss it. We're going to start off with a little bit of a different one here. Just today, Texas A&M athletic director Ross Bork has now became the new athletic director at Ohio State. This one's going to be a little bit big. We've talked about this for a few weeks. Washington State quarterback Cam Ward has committed to Miami. There was talks he was going to go to the NFL. He said he was going in the draft. I think he got his draft grade back, and he decided, probably shouldn't do that. So Miami was throwing the world of money at him. Eventually, it will probably come out what he ended up getting, but I'm sure it was going to be more than what he was going to make on that rookie deal. So I think that's a little bit of an interesting twist. Obviously, it'll be fun to watch DJU versus Cam Ward. When Florida State plays Miami, I was originally hoping the quarterbacks would be on opposite teams, but it is what it is. So we'll see how that goes. Kind of a surprise to me. Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers is returning to Texas for another year. I was not anticipating that. This one's going to cause a discussion. Florida guard Richie Leonard has committed to Florida State. I know it benefits my team, but this is one of the worst things I've ever heard of in my life. I don't understand why this should not be allowed. I'm a little mad at Mike Norvell for this. We should not allow Florida players on our team. Florida State. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, I thought about this because you and I have talked about it a little bit. For these players that are transferring and have only been there, let's say 1 year at Florida, I'm trying to think of this objectively from a player standpoint. They probably don't have the hatred for that opposing team that the actual organization or program does.
I feel like that's the problem with all of the elite camps and all the camps in the summer and all of that, or all these kids know each other and they're all friends, and the rivalries kind of aren't what they used to be. They're more friendly no one wants to see Florida be friendly. That's not what I'm here for.
Well, if you didn't grow up hating Miami or hating Florida State,
right?
Like you said, all these camps where the 7-on-7 and all the other elite camps, you're just not getting that built-in cultural hatred of an Alabama, Florida State, Ohio State, Michigan. Your buddies with 3-4 of their guys that you went to camp with, and and you don't, and then with the money, NIL money that they're dropping on you, that overcomes a lot of other minor issues.
Yeah, definitely.
Florida State. I remember back in the day, transfer portal wise, at least Notre Dame would have to sign off on if they would allow you to transfer to a different school. So you couldn't go to Michigan if we were playing Michigan next year. So that's definitely changed.
Well, there was a lot of that, and a lot of they had to approve if you were going in conference too, ACC to ACC or something like that. Yeah. All right, so Florida State cornerback Fentrell Cypress is going to return for another year at Florida State. Texas A&M wide receiver Evan Stewart, which we've talked about for a few weeks, he has committed to Oregon. A little bit of a strange twist on this one. UNLV quarterback, which then became Georgia quarterback Jaden Miava, has now committed to USC. Just last week, we announced he committed to Georgia. He has changed already. So he will be at USC now. Mississippi, another situation here. Mississippi State quarterback, which then was Washington quarterback Will Rogers. He was actually on the sidelines with them for the national championship game. He's back in the portal. Washington offensive lineman Nate Kalepo has entered the portal. 5-star wide receiver Jamie French has decommitted from Alabama. Just because we talked a little Bama to Florida State, French's high school quarterback is Florida State commit Tramel Jones Jr. So be on the lookout for that. We got a little bit of Bama news here. Caleb Downs, their best player on their team, he is undecided on entering the portal. He's kind of going back and forth, wavering on his decision right now. Defensive back Des Ricks has entered the portal. He's visiting Oregon, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. Texas A&M is supposed to be the favorite right now. Defensive back Trey Amos from Alabama has also entered the portal. Alabama safety Antonio Kite has also entered the portal. Alabama defensive lineman Isaiah Hastings has flipped his commitment. He was going to go to Missouri, and now he has switched to go to Syracuse, which, like I said a few weeks ago, Missouri and Syracuse are two teams that are killing the portal. Syracuse especially, because you kind of don't expect that. Forget his name already, but the Georgia defensive back coach that is now Syracuse's head coach is doing really good things there. Arizona running back Jonah Coleman, he's entered the portal. He is likely to follow Jed Fish to Washington. Ohio State wide receiver Emeka Igbuka is returning to Ohio State. Ohio State wide receiver Bryson Rogers has withdrawn from the portal. He will be returning to Ohio State. Ohio State tight end Sam Hart has entered the portal. Miami wide receiver Brashard Smith has committed to the horse team, SMU. Michigan wide receiver Darius Clemens commits to Oregon State. Washington cornerback Javian Green is committed to Stanford. This one's a little interesting. So just last week, we mentioned that TJ Finley was returning to Texas State. Well, then I see that Jaden DeLora committed to Texas State, and I was like, well, that is extremely odd. Well, it's not odd anymore because today TJ Finley entered the portal. So TJ Finley out after I expected him to return. Jaden DeLora in at Texas State. So TJ Finley is actually one to watch. He's a very good quarterback. Let's see where he ends up. Alabama defensive back Desmond Ricks is visiting Texas A&M and LSU. Michigan State defensive end Zion Young is committed to Missouri. Duke cornerback Jalen Stinson withdrew from the portal. Arizona quarterback Braden Dorman is entered the portal. This one's kind of big for Michigan. 4-star cornerback Chris Ewald Jr. is decommitted from Michigan. He's actually big. That's a big recruit. So let's see where he ends up landing. USC wide receiver Dorian Singer is committed to Utah to go there with our Wayne's World man, Cam Rising, if he ever gets his ACL fixed. Washington wide receiver Jeremy Bernard has entered the portal. Michigan running back Donovan Edwards is returning to Michigan for another year. Michigan tight end Matthew Hebner has entered the portal. This one, I'm not sure if this is going to stay because this was before the Brent Brennan news. But Nebraska quarterback, former Florida State quarterback Chuba Purdy had committed to San Jose State. But that was before Brennan. So to see if he actually keeps that commitment or not. Washington cornerback Dyson McCutcheon is withdrawn from the portal. He will be staying at Washington. Alabama tight end Amari Nablack enters the portal. Washington quarterback Austin Mack entered the portal. Liberty wide receiver CJ Daniels commits to LSU. Alabama wide receiver Isaiah Bond commits to Texas. It was interesting to watch his visit to Texas because he posted a video of him in a Ferrari. So I should tell you what's going on there. TCU quarterback Chandler Morris is committed to North Texas. We've got all Washington guys here. Washington DB Asia Turner entered the portal. Washington DB Michelle Powell entered the portal. Washington cornerback Jabbar Muhammad, which was one of my favorite players on the team this year, entered the portal. Alabama, Oregon, and Texas are his top three right now. And then Washington quarterback Alex Johnson has entered the portal. I sent this to Reese when this happened because this was huge. USC defensive end Corey Foreman is committed to Fresno State. A couple of years ago, he was the number one recruit in the nation, and he's going to be now a defensive line at Fresno, which I love. For showing our age here a little bit, cornerback Tevin Griffey is committed to Boise State. That is Ken Griffey Jr.'s son.
Nice. It's my new favorite player now.
Yeah. Wow. Well, he's going to be on the Boise team that we have deemed a invitational team. So we'll be watching him a lot. LSU running back Logan Diggs commits to Ole Miss. Oregon, then Auburn quarterback Robbie Ashford is committed to South Carolina. Florida Atlantic interior offensive lineman Kamar Bell is committed to South Carolina. Fresno State quarterback Logan Fife has committed to go play for Montana. And then just today, Alabama linebacker Cam Riley and Auburn linebacker Cam Riley and Auburn safety Donovan Kaufman have both entered the portal. That's it for the portal news. And I'm going to throw two more things out here real quick before we open the discussion. Reese, last week we talked about Colorado, North Dakota State, and I said, watch out. North Dakota State could be dangerous in that first game at Colorado. The line came out for that game. Colorado has opened as a 7.5-point favorite. And one last bit of news. The rumored release date for NCAA football is July 12th. The return of the video game that we've been waiting on since NCAA 14 came out. So rumored date of July 12th. All right.
That's
so
big.
That is
now the next thing we need to know is, can we make custom teams like we did before? Because
I hope so.
If only we could import the ones from like NCAA 03.
The team builder teams
on there.
were absolutely incredible.
There's some Stephen Delk themed teams out there. I definitely want to pull into the Power Five. The only thing that I had here to talk about, it came out earlier today, is it sounds like Noah Fafita and their number one receiver McMillan are both staying at Arizona.
Yeah, I'm really hoping McMillan goes in the portal and Florida State somehow gets him. McMillan was one of my favorite players to watch for Arizona. Him and Fafita were ridiculous.
Yeah, that was one of the big questions with Fafita potentially leaving with Fish going, but it looks like he is going to be staying at Arizona, so that's big for the Wildcats.
Yeah, and Brennan's a good coach too. I think they'll still have success there. I don't think they're going to be anything to slouch at joining the Big 12 this year. I still think they're going to be a competitive team and probably could even compete still for the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, they run a similar offense to what Arizona does, don't they?
Yeah, and Brennan just 2 years ago had the hottest team in college football. San Jose State was ridiculous. They went from nothing to extremely good, and then they lost all those guys. That's why they had a little bit of a down year.
Yeah, so that's big news for them.
Carter, you got anything on the portal? I know it was only 95,000 guys, but
Yeah, I kind of look at the portal differently through some blue and gold glasses. So I kind of mainly focus on the Notre Dame guys. And
there weren't
Irish
any
guys
on that
have a
whole list.
really
So
good,
anyone you want to throw in, you can. There were literally zero. That must mean they're not recruiting very good guys.
Well, we loaded up early pretty well with 3 receivers. The nation's leading returner for Marshall transferred in. Riley Leonard, obviously, and his running mate, the DN, RG Open.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much filled all the holes. I could see them maybe taking another offensive lineman if they can. And like I said last week, I think Harbaugh is leaving. I know he interviewed with the Chargers. That happens. That's going to open up a lot more guys for Notre Dame to recruit. They can't just recruit all these guys like Florida State can. They have to actually go to school and attend classes.
Hey, we actually are very good academically, surprisingly.
Shots fired.
The admissions are definitely more difficult, and they've lessened up a little bit.
Yeah.
Under Freeman, it's definitely lessened up.
I did see that there are rumors going on that Harbaugh has requested immunity from anything else that's potentially going to come out from any NCAA sanctions or investigations.
Put him in the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't think that is good news for Michigan fans. If he's asking for immunity, that's like I did something wrong. Can you tell me I'm not going to get in trouble for it before they actually catch him? So that's worth watching.
Go ahead and vacate that title.
Yeah. It should be vacated anyway. The correct teams were not in. It's ridiculous. But we covered Notre Dame quite a bit a few weeks ago because a lot of their guys were early. I know it was the receivers and Riley Leonard. Really about it. I mean, obviously with changes and everything for the next 3 months, there's still going to be tons of changes in the portal. And Harbaugh leaving, that opens Michigan up for 30 days. So I don't know if the portal truly ever closes, to be honest, with the way it's going.
The hot rumor I'm hearing if Harbaugh leaves, Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly, yeah. I knew you were going to. Yeah.
He coached up there in Grand Valley State, won a couple titles, and I think the seat's already pretty hot in LSU.
Yeah, he was at both. Yeah.
Yep, Central Michigan. Yep.
Yeah, it'll be
go to LSU so he could recruit without ever having to leave the golf course. I don't know if he'd go to Michigan.
True.
That's where his family's at.
When they're paying $12-15 million a year to stay at LSU, that buys a lot of airplane trips for family.
No, I meant his comment with his accent. That was the
family.
Yeah. But yeah, I have seen that with Kelly to Michigan. It'll be interesting to see because that a lot of things Harbaugh does leave. If they don't give it to Sharon Moore, then we've got a lot of interesting things going on. We start flipping even more big schools with Michigan than LSU. I mean, then someone's got to go to LSU, and the portal will it'll never end at that point. The portal will go until July.
Tommy Reese to LSU. I see that in the cards.
Yeah, Carter, I'm sure you've probably seen something because I know he's going to be out. Where do you think he's going to end up?
I actually haven't seen anything. I was kind of I didn't expect Grubbs to follow DeBoer, so I wasn't sure if he would try to keep him on staff. But so far, I haven't seen any smoke. He's always been a guy I think that wants to go back to the NFL. So if he can get an OC job in the NFL, that might be his ticket.
Be interesting. Well, Reese, if no one else has anything, that should finish the college portion.
Right on. Well, I think the big moral of the story here is don't piss off Mike Norvell because he's going to steal all of your players. Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. This is going to be a lot to follow as we move into the 2024 season. All right, let's jump into some NFL stuff, guys. So first and foremost, let's jump into last week's pick results. I finished 3-3. Jake finished 2-4. Taxis, who couldn't join us today, he finished 4-2. Scott finished 2-4, and Carter finished 4-2. So those are the records for last week. We'll continue to track these picks as we go through the divisional rounds. Let's jump right into some recaps here. So we're going to do a pretty thorough recap of each game, and then we'll jump into picks. So our games kicked off on Saturday at 4:30 as the Texans dominated the Cleveland Browns 45-14 to advance to the divisional round of the playoffs. The game started off with a bit of back and forth. The Texans got on the board first with a 21-yard field goal by Fairborn with 5+ minutes left in the first. Cleveland answered on the next drive, finishing with a touchdown by Kareem Hunt. Houston answered right back, scoring a touchdown on a 15-yard pass from Stroud to Nico Collins, making it 10-7 heading into the second. Cleveland answered again with another touchdown from Kareem Hunt, making it 14-10 Cleveland, but from there it got pretty ugly. The very first play from Houston on the next drive was a 76-yard touchdown to Brevin Jordan. With a minute left in the half, Houston came up with another big play, this time a 37-yard toss to Dalton Schultz to make it 24-14 Texans heading into the half. The Texans defense then decided to join the scoring party as midway through the third quarter, Joe Flacco threw 2 pick sixes on consecutive drives, one to Steven Nelson and then to Christian Harris, making it 38-14 heading into the fourth. Devin Singletary joined in on the fun to kick off the fourth quarter, scoring a 19-yard touchdown run and securing Houston's win 45-14. Houston now heads to Baltimore to play the Ravens in the divisional round. CJ Stroud went 16 for 21 for 274 on 3 scores and did not at all look like a rookie quarterback against one of the best defenses in the league this year. What are some thoughts on the game, and how do you guys think the Texans can repeat the performance against a team with a similar defense but a much better offense in the Baltimore Ravens? Carter, I'll throw it to you first.
I think that last thing you said is going to be the key in that game, and we're not picking them yet, but Baltimore's offense is definitely way better than Cleveland. I know I was wacko for Flacco, and he was completely wacko in that game. Got heated up in the pocket there a little bit and just threw one up. Yeah, that's it. I'm done. He got heated up in the pocket and threw one up there, a prayer, got pick sixed. And that after that, the route was on. I was kind of surprised that Cleveland couldn't get much of a pass rush on Stroud. He seemed to just dissect that defense, and I was super, super impressed with him in his first start in the playoffs.
It was a pretty crazy stat that it's pretty crazy that Cleveland was number 1 at home and like the worst on the road. Like, how can your defense be that different? Like that just shouldn't happen.
I don't get it either because Schwartz is a stud. Like, they have a tremendous defensive coordinator, so I don't know. There's home field advantage isn't that big of a deal, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
No, you wouldn't think so. Defense is the one thing that should travel. That's the
you would think. What were you saying, Scott?
They played so undisciplined. They were showing the replays of that touchdown run or touchdown toss to Jordan. You know, they were so out of place. Nobody even deep in the secondary, covering the wrong man. It just such a bad defensive play lapse for Cleveland. With how well they played for most of the season.
Yeah, it definitely didn't end well. You could definitely see the energy kind of go out of the building for Cleveland after that second pick six from Flacco. I think at that point the team just kind of thought it was over with, and they kind of played that way. So we'll see what happens with Houston going into Baltimore, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Let's touch base on the next game here. Our last Saturday game saw the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Miami Dolphins 26-7. This was a crazy one from the jump, as this was the 4th coldest game in the history of the NFL, with temperatures starting at -4 degrees Fahrenheit at kickoff and wind gusts recorded up to -27. Although both teams were clearly impacted by the weather, it was the Dolphins that seemed to struggle the most to get things going. Kansas City struck first, finding the end zone with an 11-yard pass from Mahomes to Rashee Rice to give KC the lead in the first quarter, and they never relinquished that lead. The Chiefs kicked off the second quarter with a 28-yard field goal from Harrison Butker. The ensuing drive saw a big 53-yard touchdown pass from Tua to Tyreek, and it looked like the Dolphins may make it a game, but they failed to find the end zone after that. 2 more field goals in the first half by the Chiefs took it to 16-7 at halftime. A 4th field goal by Butker midway through the third took it to 19-7, and with 11 minutes left in the fourth, Isaiah Pacheco ran one in to bring to the final score 26-7. This was one of the better offensive games of the season for KC, despite the freezing weather, as Mahomes went 23 of 41 for 264 and a score. Pacheco ran it 24 times for 89 and a score. And Rashee Rice also had a great game with 8 catches for 130 and a score. The Dolphins obviously came into this game with several key injuries, especially on defense, but their offense was also struggling a lot. That offense was potent all year, but Miami finished with just 264 yards in total offense, only saw 13 first downs, and went 1 for 12 on third down conversions. Kansas City moves on to the divisional round and will now travel to Buffalo to face off against the Bills on Sunday. Thoughts on the game, and how do you think KC can keep this offensive momentum going as they travel to face a tough Buffalo Bills team? Workman, I'll throw it to you first.
So I think there were a few evident things very quickly. One, the Dolphins defense was cold as shit, and they were not going to hit anyone. Like it was obvious. They had no interest in tackling. Jalen Ramsey, I mean, he's one of my favorite. He's probably my second favorite player in the NFL, and you could just tell he's one of the best tacklers in the corner position probably to ever play the game. He wasn't about to hit anyone. He didn't give a damn. He was like, this is not what I'm playing in. I do think the Chiefs offense was pretty impressive when it comes to the weather. Especially Rice stepping up big. Kelsey had some drops, which were kind of crucial, but for Rice to step up, that's what they need to get through the playoffs. They need a player to step up, and Rice had a huge game. Pacheco was Pacheco. I mean, obviously, a little short on yards. He's under 4 a carry. Mahomes, for situation, great game. I mean, you can't fault that. Ball had to be hard as hell. There was no way he was getting a good grip on that. So for what the situation was, I feel like he played well. He even had a big run. Almost scored on it. It was big. Butker 4 for 4 in that weather. Again, the ball's hard as hell. That's impressive also, and with the win. So for the Chiefs to come out and play you probably can't say a complete game yet, but much more well-rounded than what they've been recently. I think that's a good sign, especially getting ready to play a team that they've kind of owned in the playoffs the last few years.
Yeah, it should definitely be interesting. The other thing that I thought was crazy was it was so damn cold out that Mahomes' helmet cracked, like literally had a hole in it.
Yeah.
That was a little crazy. Just goes to show you exactly how cold that weather was.
Well, the Dolphins touchdown was, the only points they scored was just a miracle heave. I mean, there was pass interference, but Tyreek still caught it and scored. But I mean, that play wasn't even that fantastic. Like it was more of a miracle that it even happened.
For sure. Carter, Scott?
Well, I think the Dolphins need to look in the mirror about the mental toughness of that game. Kansas City had it, and they did not. Like you're talking about, unwilling to tackle, not wanting to hit. Offensive line, run game, wherever they needed to be physical, they weren't. I think they need a long look in the mirror and say, the physicality, the mental toughness part of it. The game plan can be sound, but if you guys can't go out and execute, and they're worried about getting back to the bench, or everybody who's played and come out after halftime and know how difficult that is to get back into that cold after you've been sitting in the locker room for 20 minutes. Kansas City had it and Miami didn't.
Yeah, and one thing to throw onto that also is it kind of showed a lot of the Dolphins' wins this year were against teams that weren't good. And when they played teams that were good, they got beat in almost every game. So, I mean, I like to say that that's not a telling story in the NFL usually, but it seemed kind of evident in this case.
Yeah, I definitely think they were also missing. I mean, it very clearly.
They
a lot of injuries. Xavier Howard, Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, their linebacker that came back and then got hurt again and was out for the season, broke his wrist, I think. I can't remember his name.
Van Ginkel or something like that.
Yeah.
No, Van Ginkel was out too, but Van Ginkel had stepped in for their guy who was running the offense. I can't believe I can't remember his name. It's not Javon Holland. Anyway, they were obviously missing a lot of very key players on the defensive side of the ball. The offense, I think, was the most surprising to me. I thought they had some potential to at least particularly get the ground game running and control the clock a little bit. It just never happened. Carter, you have any input here before we move on to the next game?
I think you guys pretty much covered it. That's about what I thought was going to happen. Just they were going to get out physical. They weren't going to be ready for that. I mean, it started with Mike McDaniels on the sideline. He looked like the most miserable person ever, all bundled up there. L'Jarius Sneed, I seen a highlight of him just burying Tyreek Hill at the line. He couldn't even get up out of a stance. They were just playing a different brand of football.
When that play happened, I text Ike and I said, L'Jarius Sneed just absolutely killed Tyreek. And Tyreek actually tweeted about it, how he knocked him into Cancun, which was hilarious.
Yeah, that's what I'd seen.
Yeah, that was good. I like that. Speaking of L'Jarius Sneed, he's going to be a free agent. I'm hoping Brad Holmes would like to open up the bag because we need a number one corner, and I think he would be fantastic.
Yeah, Jerome Baker was the guy that I was trying to think of. He was the linebacker that's supposed to lead that defense. He came in, and I think he played halfway through week 18, and then he got injured, and he was out for the season. So all to say, hopefully the Dolphins can get healthy and maintain a good majority of the players that they have on the team right now, because they have some good talent. It's just a matter of making it happen through the.
Is Tua due up for a new contract this year, or what's he doing? It's got to be.
I thought he had one more year.
Yeah, I think he has one more year.
Year.
Let me look real quick.
I mean, he's got that offense looks really good sometimes, but.
So last year they picked up his 5th-year option.
So his 5th year is next year. He expires in 25.
Yeah, he's got 23.1 million next year. Yep.
I don't think you can give him a max deal. You can bring him back for that. But
roster management next year.
What was that about roster management?
They have to make some hard decisions. They've got Tyreek, who's the number 1 paid wide receiver. They got Tua coming up for a contract extension. You got all these big names. The 2 running backs, the defensive line. Who are they going to pay and who are they going to let walk?
Yep.
Yeah. So just to take a look at that quickly, I've got the contract situation pulled up here. So Jerome Baker, who I just talked about, Tua, just pulling out big names: Javon Holland, Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, Duke Riley, Cam Good, all of those guys, amongst others, looks like they have expiring contracts at the end of next season. So I would assume that at least 1 or 2 of those guys is probably going to go. I'll be interested to see what they do with Raheem Mostert because he is 31 years old. That seems to be top
no running backs
for running backs. Like he's probably done. So
he gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let him and Wilson go. Wilson can't stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean they have Achane, right? So like that's the first piece of the puzzle there, but they're gonna have to get somebody to be in there as a touch point for him, similar to how he played with Mostert. So we'll see what happens. All right, let's move into this next game that I don't want to talk about. First of our Sunday games was the second shocker of the wild card weekend as the Green Bay Packers dominated the Dallas Cowboys 48-32. Don't let the final score fool you because it's not at all indicative of what actually happened in the game. The Packers took the ball to open the drive, to open the game and proceeded to drive straight down the field and cap off an 8-minute drive with a 3-yard touchdown run by Aaron Jones. Dallas and Green Bay traded 2 drives that resulted in punts, and with a minute and a half left in the first, Dak Prescott threw an interception to Jair Alexander. Green Bay capitalized on that mistake with another touchdown run by Aaron Jones at the beginning of the second quarter. Another possession from the Cowboys resulted in a punt, placing the Packers on the 7. They then proceeded to drive 93 yards down the field in 10 plays, culminating in a 20-yard touchdown pass from Jordan Love to Dontavian Wicks, putting Green Bay up 20-0. What happened next seemed to put the nail in the coffin as Dallas ran 6 plays on the next possession before Prescott threw a pick 6 to Darnell Savage, who took it back 64 yards, making it 27-zip. Dallas scored as time expired at the half with a Jake Ferguson touchdown catch to make it 27-7 going into the half, but it was clear that the whole Dallas had dug was too much to overcome. Dallas came out in the second half with the ball, but the drive stalled and resulted in a Brandon Aubrey field goal. On the next possession, Green Bay scored again on Aaron Jones' 3rd score of the game. Dallas responded with a touchdown from Tony Pollard, but Green Bay then scored on their next 2 possessions, taking it to 48-16 with 10.5 left in the 4th. There were 2 more garbage time touchdowns and 2 2-point conversions that brought the score to 48-32, but the game was basically out of reach by halftime. The stats are definitely deceiving in this game. The Cowboys had 100 more total yards than Green Bay, 15 more first downs. They converted 10 of 16 third downs, ran 45 more plays, had less penalties, longer time of possession. But this is a situation where you can't say that the stats don't lie, because kudos to Jordan Love, Aaron Jones, and Romeo Doubs, who all had tremendous games in this big win. Green Bay now moves to the divisional round and will travel to the Bay Area to face off against the 1 seed San Francisco 49ers. The Cowboys, on the other hand, now have a lot of questions around the team. Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott both now sit on the hot seat, and Dan Quinn's performance and lack of adjustments in this game may have played himself out of potential head coaching gig. What are the thoughts on the game, and what do you guys think Dallas should do at the head coach and quarterback positions as it continues its mediocre playoff performance for yet another year? Carter, let's throw it to you first.
Man, I think they forgot to tell that youngest team in the NFL that they didn't stand a chance winning in Dallas, because they came out guns blazing. Totally surprised the hell out of me. Jordan Love looked amazing. He had the same stat line as C.J. Stroud did against Cleveland, basically. And I was just super impressed with the game plan LaFleur had. I don't know where you go in Dallas. Dak in the playoffs just once again throws up a dud. And I sent that meme to you guys in the group chat with Belichick standing behind McCarthy. I wouldn't be surprised if Jones throws the bag at him or Harbaugh or anyone like that.
Yeah, I texted Reese during the game and I said, would there be a more hated sports team in history than a Bill Belichick-led Dallas Cowboys team?
Yeah, I don't
Could you imagine the hatred that team would have? That's some hate.
Yeah, I don't think Prescott had as bad of a game as what he's getting credit for, but he still did not show up. We did not make adjustments the first half when, I was texting Workman throughout most of the game until I turned the game off. They were pressing CD and then putting a single high safety over top of CD and basically telling Dallas, beat us without CD Lamb. We made 0 adjustments. Then you look on the defensive side of the ball, and we were playing soft coverage for a majority of the game, and they kept burning us, and 0 attempts were made to make any adjustments there. We were playing with 6 DBs on like 85% of the plays, and they were running the ball all over us. Like, I don't understand how Dan Quinn can look at the gameplay as it's happening and not attempt to make adjustments. I know we don't have tremendous play in the interior defensive line, but we've got Bell in there playing an interior linebacker. He weighs 205 pounds. Like, that clearly was not working, and Green Bay schemed around it. So you have to make adjustments in the middle of the game, and that wasn't being done. Dak had a great year in the regular season. Again, he didn't show up like he normally does in the playoffs. I don't know if the answer is to move away from Dak because I don't know what the alternatives are. I do know that the McCarthy situation is, from a lot of Cowboys fans, they were calling for his head at the end of last season. Now that you have Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick and Harbaugh and all these names out there, and Jerry not being Jerry and firing McCarthy to go find somebody else would probably send Cowboy fans into even more of a craze than what they are right now. I don't get it. There were 0 adjustments throughout that entire game, and you can't do that. Green Bay definitely showed their hand in how they were going to attack us, and Quinn's defense there was no adjustments there. Micah Parsons did not really show up. He had 1 pressure. They finally called a hold, for the first time in 10 weeks.
They declined it.
They declined it. I
he
don't
got
know,
dinged
man.
up a minute for a little bit too, didn't he?
He got dinged up there towards the end of the game.
But
at that point it was over.
A little too late.
DeMarcus Lawrence wasn't around. Gilmore kept getting burnt, and we saw that, I think, as we moved in towards the back half of the season, that we don't have 5 years ago Gilmore. We understand who we have there. If we had Diggs out there on the field, maybe that would have made a small difference. But again, it's that run that just completely dominated us. I'm still kind of lost by all of it. I was really hoping Texas was going to be on here to be able to talk about it. We talked very, very briefly on it Saturday night, but I don't know the answer. I won't be upset at all if Mike McCarthy goes. At one point in time, I really wanted Dan Quinn to step in and be the next man up, but there are a lot of really good coaches that are out there right now that I think need to we need to look at the opportunity to come in and change the mindset. The other problem is that regardless of who we hire, Jerry is still the GM. And
that's what I was going to ask you. So you, as the Cowboys fan, in your scenario, what would you prefer happen just with the coaching? You don't have to throw in Dak or anything like that, because Dak, I think it's hard because it's hard to say what they would get for him and all of that and the hypothetical. Yeah. But what would be your coaching scenario? And also, do you think Dan Quinn cost himself a head coaching job?
I do think Dan Quinn definitely potentially cost himself a head coaching job. I think that he was one of the front runner favorites for the Seattle job. I don't know if that's the case anymore. Obviously, I think part of that depends on where some of these other guys land. Like if Vrabel, Harbaugh, and Belichick all fly off the board very quickly, then Seattle may not have a choice but to look at Dan Quinn. And I don't think that he's the worst coach out there, but there's also Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn and all the other guys that we talked about. There's a lot of really good coaches out there that have an opportunity to step into that role.
Seattle did request an interview with Ben Johnson today.
Yeah. So there you go. So that's one thing. As far as the coaching stuff goes, I wasn't a huge fan of Mike McCarthy when he came in. I wasn't very impressed with what he was able to do in Green Bay with the talent that he had at that point. My biggest frustration is that, and I think I texted you this during the game, Workman, We needed a Dan Campbell on that sideline that was going around and screaming at guys like, wake up and get in this game. And you just looked and everybody was just sitting on the bench, just kind of staring off into space. McCarthy never really went over and talked to his guys to try to get him repped up. Dan Quinn, because he's up in the press box, he can't do anything. The only coach that I saw getting fired up down there was Al Harris. And Al Harris is the one guy that I think can step in and take that DC role over if he decides to stay and Dan Quinn ends up going.
And now Harris was a Packer for most of his career also.
Yeah, right. So, I don't know. I personally don't know that I want Belichick just because of his age. I mean, ideally, we find a coach that can be around and set a new culture. But again, I don't know if that culture can be changed so long as Jerry Jones is there.
Well, see, and that's kind of where I go with it. Like, to me, if I was a Cowboys fan, which God knows I never will be, but if I was, I would want Vrabel with some sort of guarantee of who the OC would be, because to me, Vrabel is the best case scenario for the way that team is built.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think Vrabel would make an excellent coach. I think he would bring in a different sideline culture than what we're dealing with right now.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like, people always gave Jason Garrett shit because he just clapped on the sidelines, but McCarthy isn't doing much different. He's just not clapping.
No, that's exactly. Yeah. The difference is we had coach clap and now we have coach. Let's look at this giant ass paper that tells me the plays that we have that, like
you want some fiery. That's where Vrabel is fiery. He is just like NCDC.
Exactly.
Like, he will bring an attitude. That's what you need.
I watched 30 minutes of Hard Knocks last year and Dan Campbell had me ready to run through a wall. Like, we don't have anybody on the Cowboys that will do anything like that. I don't know, man. It takes time. It'll take time to digest. This was a rough one because by all accounts, like, we have some really solid players on the team. This is one of the more talented teams that Dallas has been able to put together. We were relatively healthy despite Diggs. The running game, we got to figure that out. Get Tony Pollard out of there. Tony Pollard is not an RB1.
Oh yeah, and get him help too.
Year. Yeah. I mean, he needs help at a bare minimum. Deuce Vaughn, obviously, he didn't really play much of a role. Rico Dowdle, he's a good complimentary back, but he's not the answer either. So I don't know. There's a lot of things to address. I do think it starts with coaching, and I do think that McCarthy should be out of there, and Jerry needs to go after a guy that's going to bring in some fire.
Yeah, I mean, just two quick thoughts, and one, Jesus, would it be crazy? So Vrabel, obviously, but this one just popped in my head when we were talking about fiery. What about John Gruden? Like, picture Gruden with Jerry Jones. Like, could you imagine that? Like, just the craziness that would go on there. I feel like Cowboys fans would love it. Like, I feel like that's a hire they would want. Obviously, again, we're talking about you have to bring the opposite of Vrabel now. You got to bring in the right DC with him, or even keep Dan Quinn. Maybe keep Quinn with like a Gruden. Like, I don't know. To me, McCarthy can't be the coach anymore. Like, I don't know. I don't know if you guys.
I don't know if you guys saw the halftime conversation, but Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, Jimmy Johnson was fired up and like screaming at the camera, and I was like, I hope to God that's what's happening in the locker room right now. And I knew that's not what was happening.
McCarthy looks like he just sat down at like a Denny's and he's just ready to eat. Like, he doesn't look like he has any motivation or like passion. Like, he looks like he's just existing.
Yeah, I mean, throw a fucking clipboard on the sideline, something. Like, I don't know, dude. Like, it just the lack of intensity on this team drives me insane. Micah Parsons is one of my favorite players in the league, but stop bitching and just play football. Like, well, I think that permeates through the locker room when you have somebody that's that vocal about things. Like, yeah, it sucks, and he's not being treated fairly from a officiating standpoint, but bitching about it's not going to do anything. So shut up and play ball. Like.
Right. And I will be the first to say I am a very big Dak hater. Like, I've never thought he was worth anything. I thought he was way overrated, but I'll give him credit. This year, he had a great year. Like,
he did.
He played probably the best he's ever played in his career this year.
Especially if you look at last season.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, he flipped the script.
Yep. I think Dak was very good this year, but in the grand scheme of things, can that return next year if it's a different coach under a different offense? And like, it's kind of like the Chicago thing to me. Like, I feel like it's almost worth a big blow up as opposed to a little blow up, because Dallas is going to have a lot of guys to pay. How are they going to pay all these guys?
Well, that's the thing is we're not going to be able to pay all these guys.
Right.
And,
so they're going to have to blow it up anyway, essentially. So it's they're in an interesting mess, I feel.
The one guy they cannot let go of is CD Lamb. They have to find a way to keep him on the team. Micah has a couple years, I think, left on his contract. The rest of the guys, like,
well, in the O-line a couple years ago was the best offensive line in football, and now you're lucky to get them for 5 games out of the season. Like it's
right. That's always been a problem with Dallas. They always have a problem keeping their offensive line healthy. Tyron Smith is consistently been one of the best tackles in the league, but he only plays 12 games a year. Zach Martin is getting there up in age. We did get Tyler Smith, who is become one of the better linemen in the NFL. So I'm happy where that's at. But yeah, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle that need to be addressed. I don't know.
No run game kills you.
Zero run game.
And Pollard was supposed to be a workhorse back. Everyone thought when Zeke left, but that did not come to fruition at all.
Yeah. I understand them
offensively.
I understand them getting rid of Zeke, but they should have replaced him. They can't just say, Tony, let's go do it all.
Right. Well, that's what they're like. We're happy with the guys that we have. Which
coming off injury too.
We hear that a lot. Yeah, which is crap. I did hear that, or I read that Zeke tried getting released the last week of the season so he could sign with Dallas, and Belichick told him no. So, for what's that worth? But I mean, at that point in time, like, number one, why would Belichick do that?
I wouldn't let him do that either.
Yeah. And like number two, like, it wasn't going to make that much of a difference. But I mean, we would have just brought in Zeke to lose. So I don't know, man. There's a lot, and I don't know really. It starts with coaching. I don't think Dan Quinn needs to get the head coaching job. I thought differently a couple weeks ago, but the lack of adjustments really, really disappointed me in that game.
I mean, it's tough to say one game ruins a guy, but I mean, it was so bad in the biggest moment, and it's not like this is the first time.
Right.
Like, this is a perennial playoff occurrence. So it's
28-3 is all I have to say there in order for you to know how Dan Quinn makes adjustments.
Exactly. Right.
So yeah, there's a lot there. Yeah, we spent a lot of time on this game. I mean,
it was expected.
I don't know where they go from here. But I do think it starts with getting rid of McCarthy. So we'll see what happens. Scott, you haven't really weighed in here much. Do you have anything to say?
I was just entertained by the pain that you're suffering.
Hell yeah.
I think I was disappointed in the like you're talking about the lack of changes, in-game changes. It was like the coaches said, "Hey, I've got a great game plan, and we're going to stay with it." It's just the players aren't executing, and they never changed. They got some garbage time, desperation. Green Bay put in the backup quarterback, backup everybody. And so they got a couple scores that way. But otherwise, coaches thought, hey, my game plan is great. It's the players. And that was just, once it got out of hand, there was no getting that one back.
Yeah, one bright spot that I do think came out of this season is we do have our tight end one. Jake Ferguson is a stud, and we need to keep him around. He is the perennial replacement for Jason Witten. I think he could be on this team for 10 plus years. Like, he is prototypical Cowboy. He was fired up through that entire game. Like, he puts forward 100% effort on every play. I love that out of him. He's become one of my favorite players on the team. One of the bigger disappointments has been the performance of Michael Gallup. Unfortunately, I wish we would have gotten him more involved. He was such a good player. I know, Workman, you're a fan of him being out of Fresno.
No, he was Colorado State.
Or Colorado State, I'm sorry.
But same conference, Mountain West. I watched him a ton. Yeah.
So I don't know. We brought in Cooks, and that's the thing. Like, we got Cooks involved every 4 or 5 games. So I don't know. I didn't get it. They need to move on. A big blow up would be ideal, but we know that's not going to happen because Gary consistently thinks that we're only 1 or 2 guys away from a Super Bowl win. So
I do feel like, though it might not be a big blow up, I do still think there's going to be a lot of changes on the roster, though, just because of that money situation. Like, I don't see a way they can get around it. Like, they're going to be stuck if they don't. So I think they're going to have to do a decent amount of roster moves, but we'll see in the next few months, but just the early guess.
Yeah, Turpin, Marquise Bell, Hendershot's not much of a play. Odigizua Vander Esch, who I love Vander Esch, but he can't stay healthy. CD Lamb, Zach Martin, Brandon Cooks, DeMarcus Lawrence, Dak Prescott, all of those guys have contracts that are expiring in 2025. So
good luck.
Yeah, there's no way we can retain all of those guys. So,
I thought they extended Zach Martin.
They have not yet. He's still sitting at his current contract. So, all right, let's move into the next game here. Yeah, he was holding out early in this before the season started. All right, so let's move on to the next game here. Saturday night's game was much, much better as the Rams battled the Lions in the first home playoff game in 3 decades for Detroit. It ended in a positive note for Lions fans, and Detroit beat the Rams 24-23 in Detroit's first playoff win in 32 years. Detroit came out firing, scoring on their first possession with a 75-yard drive and a 1-yard touchdown run by David Montgomery. The Rams responded with a drive that eventually stalled into a Brett Maher field goal, making it 7-3 Detroit. The Lions scored on their second possession, going 70 yards and culminating with a 10-yard touchdown run by rookie running back Jahmyr Gibbs, making it 14-3 to end the first quarter. LA came out firing in the second, scoring a 50-yard touchdown pass to rookie standout Puka Nacua, bringing the score to 14-10. Detroit answered yet again, this time with the 69-yard drive. They ended with a touchdown pass to another standout rookie in Sam Laporta. With the score 21-10, Stafford again answered right back, this time throwing a 38-yard touchdown pass to Tutu Atwell, bringing the score 21-17 heading into the half. Both teams made defensive adjustments going into halftime, and it slowed the offense on both sides of the ball. LA took the ball to start the third, but the drive only went 4 plays and resulted in a punt. Detroit came out with a 9-play drive that resulted in them kicking a field goal to make it 24-17. The next 2 Rams drives went 10 or more plays, but they still couldn't find the end zone and instead resulted in field goals. LA's last field goal came early in the fourth to make it 24-23, and that is where the game ended. This was a battle between Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford as these teams went blow for blow through much of the game. Both quarterbacks finished with plus 80 game grades from PFF, but it was Jared Goff who proved to be the better quarterback in this game. He finished the game with an 88% adjusted completion percentage, which accounts for drops, batted passes, spikes, and throwaways, which ranks 7th in playoff performances since 2020. Detroit now gets to host another home playoff game this weekend as they head up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Sunday afternoon. With a win here, they would be getting 2 playoff wins for the first time since their championship run in the 50s. What are your thoughts on the game, and how do you see the Bucs matching up against this Lions squad? Jake, I'll throw it to you.
First, I would like to start this by, if you remember a week or 2 ago, I mentioned the Cowboys-Lions game in the playoffs back in, I think it was 2014. Lions got screwed. I didn't watch the rest of the playoffs. Packers beat Dallas. Isn't it funny how it works?
Yeah. Am I clearly already not in enough pain?
It's funny how it works. We got screwed. NFL football gods say, let's fix this again. Obviously, it was a great game. Last week, I said, I hope Stafford throws for 400 yards and we win. Stafford threw for 367 and we won. It was a Matthew Stafford game. He came out, no-look passes, absolutely slinging it, died on the field, came back, was afraid he was going to lead the charge. That was every game he ever played at Ford Field. So we were witnessing 10 years of Matthew Stafford as a Lion all over again. I was absolutely terrified at the end of the game we were going to give him the ball back, because if there's one thing that fans that have watched him play know and Lions fans know, if you give Stafford the ball with 2 minutes, you're losing. He will go down the field and you will lose. He's the best fourth quarter, 2-minute quarterback in the history of the NFL, in my opinion. He's so ridiculous. His stats are crazy if you look at him. Goff, absolutely unbelievable. The first half, our offense could not be stopped. The huge thing was our defense was a little bend but don't break, but when we got in the red zone, held them to field goals, which was the difference of the game. You keep them out of the end zone and you win. Obviously, Puka killed us, but our secondary's not the best. I've mentioned before, Cam Sutton, I'm not too big on him as our number 1. He has struggled a lot. But overall, it's what you asked for. It was the craziest atmosphere I've seen ever in that stadium. I know they were talking with one of the guys. I think it might have even been Stafford. Well, I don't remember who said it, but they were like, the loudest I've ever heard this stadium was the Monday Night Football game back when we started the season 5-0. I was actually at that game. It was in 2009, and the stadium was unbelievable. It was crazy. They played the Bears that night. It was the loudest stadium I've ever been in. and they said it blew it out of the water this week. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like this coming week with the fact that the Lions could be playing for an NFC Championship berth in our home stadium. Like it's literally unbelievable to think. Another thing, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I talked about him at the beginning of the year. I put him in my top 5 receivers. I was thinking today, because I was thinking about that, I think there might be 2 receivers I put ahead of him in the NFL. That's Chase and Jefferson. To me, he's the 3rd best receiver in the NFL. He's unguardable. You know he's getting the ball, and he goes for over 100 every week. He's unbelievable. But overall, it just love that we won the game. I even text you at the 2-minute warning, and I said, "Watch, we're going to do a throwback to Decker here to get the first down to win the game," because I knew that they wouldn't run the ball. Dan Campbell's not going to run the ball, and they threw the pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown, sealed the game. Game over. Stafford doesn't touch the field, which is best case scenario for at the end of the game. So it was kind of perfect. Stafford had a great game. We won. It's exactly what I wanted to happen.
Carter, what were your thoughts on the game?
First off, just congratulations to the whole city of Detroit and Workman. I know you've been through some lean years as a Colts fan. I've had some of those lean years too. Just so happy for the city. That atmosphere in the stadium was amazing. Love to see it. The red zone defense was the key to the game, like you said, just holding them to field goals. And then the only other thing I wanted to say is what you said is that play call at the end, throwing it to Amon-Ra instead of running it when I guess probably a lot of people thought they were going to run it, not you. No. But Amon-Ra is just unguardable. Throw it to your best player, win the damn game, and that's what they did. Only thing, maybe McVay probably should have went for it there.
I think so too.
The odds of them getting the ball back, I mean, he could have definitely done it. He had 2 timeouts left when he punted.
1. They had to blow the second one. They blew the first 2 because of crowd noise. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So 1 timeout, and he should have probably went for it on 4th down. But
and also, I didn't throw this in
this week.
I do want to throw this in real quick. Was that not the worst call? The offsides false start penalty. That was god awful. Screwed us. That screwed us right before half. We were going to score.
Yeah.
It's every week. You guys don't understand because you don't watch them every week. It's every week that they get screwed on the craziest shit. It's unbelievable.
Scott, you got any input here?
I really enjoyed the game. I thought it was going to be before the game, the closest game of the season or the playoffs, and it was. I really thought the Rams were coming back at the end. That was my fear, was that they were moving, and that would all they needed was that field goal. And I was really thinking that was on the march. Watching Stafford with his hand all beat up, and showing the pretty up close bloody picture of the trainer trying to get the bleeding stopped. I thought that he might be done. Something like that would need something more than just some super glue and a Band-Aid. But I was really impressed with his performance, Jared Goff's performance. Loved the game. I really didn't have a dog in that fight. Kyron Williams from Notre Dame. I liked seeing his success. He played well. I just wonder what happened to Cooper Kupp. 2 years ago, he was all world. They got Puka now, but what happened to Cooper?
He's still really good. He's been battling a lingering injury all year that he just can't seem to get over. It's affected him every game. But he's had he had a really good season still. But he was just shut down in this game.
Well, and I think to that point, I think if this were last season, we probably would have seen more of Cooper Kupp. But because of the way that Nacua has shown up this year, Tutu Atwell being where he was at, he had flashes of brilliance. I think it took a little bit of the pressure off of Kupp to have to play through some of that injury. But, that said, a little surprising to see Cooper not a little bit more involved there. Yeah. He has been dealing with that hamstring for a while.
It does suck for Higbee, that ACL tear, because he's going to miss the beginning of next year now, which is awful. I do like it. I mean, I like the Rams quite a bit, obviously. Talked about them all year. But it does suck for Higbee to be out at the beginning of the year. But I think this team is going to be really dangerous next year. Donald's going to come back. Stafford will be back. They've got money to spend this year, and they've got draft picks. So they're kind of over the shit they dealt with to buy out to win the Super Bowl, and they're still pretty good, and they're going to have stuff to spend. So the Rams are going to be pretty damn good next year. And what I don't know if I want to say it, but probably will be Stafford's last year. And to go with what you just said about his hand, I was getting real sick of the commentators talking about it. And I text Reese. I said, if his damn hand is attached, he's fine. Like, this dude is going to play through anything. Like,
if his hand's not attached, like he's still going to be out there. I mean,
he'll throw his left hand. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can't remember what game it was, but a few years ago we were watching one of those games. This is back when he was still with Detroit, and I don't know if his shoulder got dislocated or what, but his throwing shoulder got screwed up, and he still played, I think, another quarter and a half, and they ended up winning the game. I'm like, the dude's just.
Yeah, I mean, he played a whole season with a broken back. Like, nothing is getting him out of a game.
Yeah. All the hits he took in Detroit, there's no way I'm questioning his toughness. He got crushed in Detroit game after game on a physical level, and so I never question that. I just, we got blood running down your hand like there was, and if there's an actual tear in the skin, are you physically able to grip the ball of what you need to do? We saw Brock Purdy last year in the playoffs.
Yep.
Physically he was there, but couldn't actually use that arm to throw.
And his hand smoked Aleem McNeil's helmet. Like, it was a rough hit. Like, it was. I'm actually surprised. And that hand has been messed up all year. That's why he has the tape on it. He's had it taped all year because of his injuries.
Yeah, that looked very Jalen Hurts there for a minute. I was a little concerned that was going to be worse than it was, but Lions moving on. So let's move on to these last couple games here. Next up, the game originally scheduled for Sunday before a snowstorm had other plans. Our Monday kicked off with the Buffalo Bills beating the Pittsburgh Steelers 31-17. Buffalo came out hot, driving down the field easily on their opening drive to finish with a Dawson Knox touchdown, and then again on their second drive, this time finishing with a 29-yard touchdown pass to rookie tight end Dalton Kincaid, making it 14-zip after the first. Midway through the second quarter, Josh Allen went on an insane 52-yard scramble to put Buffalo up 21-0. Pittsburgh finally got on the board just before half on a 10-yard touchdown pass to Deontay Johnson, bringing the score to 21-7 at the break. The teams traded field goals to kick off the second half with kicks from the Steelers' Chris Boswell and a match from the Bills' Tyler Bass. That brought the score to 24-10 by the end of the third. Pittsburgh made it interesting to start the fourth as they capitalized on the 12-play drive with a Calvin Austin touchdown, bringing them within one score and making it 24-17. The Bills answered right back, though, with a 17-yard touchdown pass to Khalil Shakir, who made multiple Steeler defenders miss on his way to the end zone and bringing the game to its final score of 31-17. Buffalo was the heavy favorite going into this one as they ended their season on a hot streak while the Steelers were playing without TJ Watt and their backup QB and Mason Rudolph. We're playing with backup QB. With the win, Buffalo stays home and will now host the Kansas City Chiefs in Sunday night's matchup. What are thoughts on the game, and how do we see this Buffalo team matching up against this Chiefs squad that has a ton of deep playoff experience and seems to have found their footing a little bit on offense? Scott, I'll throw it to you first.
I really kind of was surprised with this game. I wasn't sure Buffalo was going to have that magic. They got on sort of that late season run, which I don't know I paid enough attention to. And the Steelers just couldn't hold on that football to start the game. I really think that Fruitmeyer, when his fumble, I just think the replay and everybody missed that. That should have been another short field for Buffalo to work with. Pittsburgh was just outclassed both sides of the ball. Their quarterback situation's a mess. Is Kenny Pickett the man? I don't know. The rumors were that he didn't refuse to go back into the game or go into the game earlier in the season. It's just kind of disappointing. Mike Tomlin walked out of his own press conference at the end when they brought up what I consider a stupid question about his contract. I don't blame him for that at all, but where's Pittsburgh's head? Talent level. Where are they at? And then look at Buffalo. Are they peaking at the right time? They're a cold weather team, so that's not going to bother them. Them Kansas City. Look out. I just really was impressed by the real dominance of Buffalo throughout the game.
Yeah, one quick note I will say is that I think it has been reported that Tomlin has told his team that he is coming back next year.
Yeah.
So Tomlin will still be in Pittsburgh. Carter, what were your thoughts on the game?
Watching that Pittsburgh team, how the hell did they even make it into the playoffs? But thinking back on it, those 2 turnovers earlier really changed the game. They could have hung around with Buffalo a little bit more even.
Yep.
And especially if they had TJ Watt, they could have made this a game. Rudolph's definitely not the answer. He didn't play terrible. He was moving the ball down the field on that defense, albeit Buffalo's defense is all banged up. But the cream of the crop in Buffalo was going to rise in this game.
Jake, you got any thoughts?
Not really. I don't like either one of these teams. To me, they're both average teams. Buffalo obviously did turn it on a little bit more. Pittsburgh's defense obviously was the saving grace for them most of the year with all the Fire Canada stuff to begin with of the season. And now Kenny's out. We got Mason Rudolph. I mean, the offense was serviceable, but I mean, without TJ Watt, I didn't think they had much of a chance. I think they're like 3 and something without TJ Watt, and it's a lot.
Yeah, it's tough to play a game with your defensive leader not in. All right, let's cover the last game here. So the last of our games in the Super Wildcard weekend saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the Philadelphia Eagles 32-9 in a game that wasn't as close as even this score depicts. Tampa opened the game with a drive that stalled and resulted in a Chase McLaughlin field goal. After a 5-play drive that resulted in a punt by the Eagles, Tampa only took 4 plays to go 79 yards, capping the drive off with a 44-yard score from Baker Mayfield and David Moore, bringing in to 10-zip. Philly had yet another dud of a drive, this time going 3 plays for 7 yards and resulting in another punt. Tampa then went 40 yards downfield, and they stalled again, kicking another field goal to make it 13-zip. Philly finally found the scoreboard on the next possession, although it only resulted in a field goal. Tampa had its 3rd drive stall outside the red zone next and kicked their 3rd field goal of the game, bringing it 16-3. Philly did capitalize on the next possession, finding the end zone on a Hurts to Goddard pass, but a missed 2-point conversion made the score 16-9 heading into the half. Things got really ugly there for Philly as they came out in the second half with a 3-play drive that went for minus 10 yards and a punt, and followed that up with a 5-play drive that went for 10 yards and resulted in yet another punt.
Is that
Tampa
good?
traded... No, that's not good. Tampa traded punts with Philly, and roughly 2 minutes left remaining in the third. A huge defensive play resulted in an Eagles safety, making the score 18-9 Tampa. Tampa then took that opportunity and seized it, taking less than a minute to go 62 yards, including a 56-yard touchdown pass from Mayfield to Trey Palmer to make the score 25-9 just before the fourth. Philly tried staying aggressive by going on fourth on their next 2 drives, but turnovers on downs were the result. The Bucs put the cherry on top of the sundae with one final score by way of a 23-yard touchdown pass from Baker to Chris Godwin, and the game ended at 32-9. Philly came into this game without their number 1 receiver, and Jalen Hurts obviously wasn't 100%. The views on the sideline show that this Eagles team is a fractured one at best. Questions now live around next steps with this squad, and there are even rumblings that Nick Sirianni has lost the locker room. What he didn't lose was his popcorn. As an Eagles fan, threw a bucket of popcorn at Sirianni as he left the field after the loss. If that wasn't enough, it has been announced that the Eagles' arguably team captain, Jason Kelce, is retiring, ending a 13-season career. Tampa Bay drove up and down the field all night and finished with 32 points for no other reason than that they stalled multiple times just outside the red zone and ended up settling for a field goal on multiple drives. They now move to the divisional round and travel to Detroit to face off against the Lions on Sunday. Thoughts on the game, and where do you see the Eagles going from here? Workman, I'll throw it to you first.
Man, I don't know where they go from here. Obviously, I was one of the more naive people to the shittiness of the second half of the season for the Eagles because – I mean, what were they? 10-1. They finished 11-6.
Yep.
Like, I mean, that's something drastic happened there. We don't know what it was, but something clearly has happened with this team. And for Kelce, yeah, Dom was part of it. for Kelce to immediately after the game, so clearly he knew. So I don't when there wasn't much thought at all for Kelce to think about it. I feel like something's going on there, and it's not good. I mean, Goddard was talking shit to Jalen Hurts on the sidelines in like the third quarter. Yeah. Sirianni clearly has lost the team. I mean, I know the coordinators were huge to lose them last year, but why is Patricia? Like Matt Patricia, like we've said multiple times, should never be on a field anywhere. I was hoping so bad Philly would win this game because I wanted Patricia to come back to Detroit next week. God, I would have. It would have been our revenge tour. And if we could have just got the Packers in the NFC Championship, it would have been the perfect Lions revenge tour to get to the Super Bowl. But whatever, we'll take Tampa. But still, Patricia is a disaster. He's got to go. I'm really interested in Sirianni because when the fans start turning on you, and you,
especially in Philly,
Philly, yeah, and like Jalen Hurts, I mean, he's had years, but he's also had not so good things. So, like, there's a lot of questions there. And Kelsey being the leader of the offense, he's going to be gone already. And actually, I did see, God, what team was it? I forget what team it was, but someone is interviewing Philadelphia's offensive coordinator. So if he's to get a job, I mean, that's another one. So, I mean, I don't know. I just don't see anything positive in Philly right now. There's going to have to be some drastic changes, I feel. I'm not – if I were to say right now, I would anticipate Sirianni back.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts finished with in 2023, 65% completion rating, just under 4,000 yards passing, 23 passing touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. By rankings, he is rated 13th after looking at all of the regular season stuff. Above him, not counting Joe Flacco since he only played 2 games, Jordan Love, Kirk Cousins, Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Tua, Stafford, Josh Allen, Dak, and Lamar Jackson. And the only reason why he's not lower is because Trevor Lawrence was injured for part of the year. Joe Burrow was out. Justin Herbert,
So there's a lot of guys that should be there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Injuries are big. Yeah.
Very, very middle of the road performance. So a lot of questions in Philly. Carter, where do you think the Eagles go from here?
The one thing I think that Eagles have going for them is they still have Howie Roseman. The way he builds that team in the trenches, the D-line, offensive line, I know they're going to lose Kelsey, but they always replenish the stock holds on the O-line. They're always drafting guys. And I think that's the way you build. But something clearly has went wrong with Sirianni. I mean, it's just that was embarrassing, really. It could, like you said, it could have been a lot uglier. But give something to Baker Mayfield, kind of a resurgence of his career down here in Tampa Bay. He's got some big-time weapons with Evans and Godwin. Cade Otton had a huge game, and Rachaad White's pretty tough. So I'm interested to see this game against Detroit.
Scott?
I think Philadelphia needs an entire breakdown of their culture. It looked like the locker room, we talked about it last week, had blown up. There's all kinds of talk and rumors about that in Philadelphia. Start off with 10-1 and lose 6 out of the last 7, and barely squeak by the one victory that they got. And they were getting beat up by teams like the Giants at the end. So the defense is awful. The offense, people have really caught up with what they're doing. Outside of that tush push, what do they have that they can build on for next year? I think those are 2 huge question marks. Starting with at the coordinator level, let's hit that reset button and move on from there. As far as Tampa Bay, I think talent-wise, they're the least talented team left in the playoffs. The offensive line and the defensive line, both are suspect at best. They've got some good skilled players on offense. Talking about Evans and Godwin, but they, we're talking about it on the GameCast. The drops that team had. I think that they going to enjoy their one playoff game check, and move into the offseason and join that nice Tampa weather.
I like where your head's at. I like that.
All right, guys. Well, that is it for the recap on the Super Wildcard weekend. So we are going to move right into divisional weekend picks. Our first matchup of the weekend is an AFC one, as the 4-seed Houston Texans face off against the 1-seed Baltimore Ravens. 4:30 p.m. Saturday at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore, airing on ESPN. Houston is coming off a huge victory at home over the Cleveland Browns, while the Ravens are coming off of a week off and previous week's rest, as many starters did not play in the final game of the regular season. Huge matchup here is Rookie of the Year candidate CJ Stroud looks like anything but a rookie and gets to go up against the probable league MVP in Lamar Jackson. Significant spread here. Baltimore comes into the game favored by 9.5. Texas is picking Houston to cover with a Baltimore win. Carter, we'll go to you first.
Should be a pretty good game. I think it's too many points, though. I like Stroud. I like what Bobby Slovic's doing. I think they can hang around here a little bit, maybe backdoor cover it. But I think Baltimore is the best team in the AFC. And at the end of the day, they'll win.
So just to clarify, you've got Houston covering and a Baltimore win?
Yes, sir. Plus 9.5.
Got it. Scott?
Watching Baltimore, have that last week of the regular season off, the playoff, rest. Indianapolis did that for years, and then they would come out and get squished in the playoffs. I really think that's a tough way to rest that much, especially when you're playing a hot team like Houston. My heart and my head are in two different places. My head says Baltimore is going to win as much as I don't like it. My heart says go for Houston, but I think I agree with Carter that Baltimore is going to win, but that's way too many points.
All right. Jake?
We've kind of talked about it with a few games this year. The only game that I really saw was close for Baltimore at home this year was when the Rams went there and took them to overtime. They had the kicker or the punt return touchdown to win it in overtime. But other than that, Baltimore kind of dominated at home. The Lions went there, got their ass beat. Seattle went there, got their ass beat. Like I just feel like I don't know. I like Baltimore at home. I think they win and cover.
All right. I am with the majority here. I think Baltimore wins this game, but I am going to take Houston here plus the points. I think 9.5 is a lot. I don't think the Texans will get the turnovers they did against Cleveland, but I do think they will make Baltimore work for it. That said, Lamar Jackson here being the difference maker. So I think Baltimore gets the win, but Houston covers. Our Saturday night game is in the NFC and features the 7-seed Green Bay Packers against the 1-seed San Francisco 49ers, 8:15 at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, airing on Fox. The Packers are coming off a statement-making win over the 2-seed Dallas Cowboys, while the San Francisco 49ers are coming off a bye week and, like the Ravens, really are coming off multiple week rest as they sat most of their starters in Week 18. This game will be another big test for Jordan Love, who is going up against another premier defense in the 49ers, but may be a bigger test for the Packers defense. Green Bay comes into this game ranked 29th in rushing yards against after first contact and 23rd in yards allowed per rush, while no other NFL team in the league has more running plays of 10 or more yards than San Francisco at 74 in the regular season. San Francisco comes into this one favored by 9.5. Texas has picked Green Bay to cover and San Francisco winning. Scott, we'll go to you first.
I really like San Francisco, what they've done. Shanahan's done such a great job. They match up well with whoever that they're playing. You don't often see them just getting shut down. So 9.5 is still a huge number. In a playoff game, Green Bay came in last week. Really surprised a lot of people. I think I'm going to go with Texas. I think San Francisco's going to win, but Green Bay cover.
Carter?
I've got San Francisco covering this. I think they're going to be too much offensively. McCaffrey's going to run wild. Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, there's just too many weapons out there. And then conversely on the other side, Bosa's going to be heating up Jordan Love, and the youngsters are going to get thoroughly dominated this week, I think.
Jake?
Yeah, there's a few things that I think go into this. Obviously, both offenses are very similar. A lot of the pre-snap motion, a lot of the same principles. Like they're almost the same offense. LaFleur's brother is obviously the offensive coordinator at the Rams, so he's seen him twice, so there's a little bit of insight there. Obviously, they just beat him in Week 17 or 18. Same situation with Baltimore. They didn't play the last week of the season, so they've had the double bye essentially for their team. Green Bay's offense is pretty good against the pass. Like their offensive line protects Jordan Love very well, and I think that could set up their offense to make some noise. It's hard to do it. I just think San Francisco's too good, though. Like I like football wise and X's and O's wise, I like Green Bay a lot in this game. But when it comes to players, I think you take the Jimmies and Joes over the X's and O's. I think that's always the football saying. So give me the Niners minus 9.5.
All right. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm taking San Fran here. I think this is an understandable bit of a letdown game potentially for Green Bay after showing out in Dallas. If the 49ers can get some pressure on Love, force him into some tight throws, they'll take momentum, and I think that'll keep it tilted in the favor of the Niners. So I'm going to take San Francisco minus the points despite the large spread. All right, the first of our Sunday matchups is an NFC battle as the 4-seed Tampa Bay Buccaneers face off against the 3-seed Detroit Lions, 3 p.m. at Ford Field in Detroit, airing on NBC. Tampa is coming off a statement win against the Philadelphia Eagles, while the Detroit Lions are riding high after securing a victory over the Matthew Stafford-led Los Angeles Rams and just experienced their first playoff win in 32 years. As we spoke about a little bit ago, the Lions do have a chance to make even more history with this team, as a win this weekend will give them multiple playoff wins for the first time since their 1957 championship run. These teams met earlier in the year, and Detroit won 20-6 in October, showing their offensive prowess after outgaining Tampa Bay 380-251, despite having several key players out. Don't sleep on Tampa, though, as they have won 6 of the last 7 and have several key players on the roster that have seen substantial playoff experience. Detroit comes into the game favored by 6.5. Workman, I'll throw it to you first.
Obviously the question here is going to be our secondary. It's a mystery every week. They've got to come out and they've got to be ready. Baker is going to sling it. I think there's going to be deep shot after deep shot to Evans. We just have to be ready. I think I hope that we're playing more of a play deep, keep everything underneath, but don't break, kind of like we played the Rams. And then when we get in the red zone, we can shut them down again. I really fear for our secondary in this game. Offensively, I think we're fine. I think we have a huge advantage on offense compared to Tampa's defense. So I'm going to take the Lions to get the win in the cover. Again, the stadium is going to be absolutely insane. This is going to be the last game. Well, I guess not. If the Packers were to win, we will host the NFC Championship, but I'm not going to hold too much into that. I guess we will know going into the game, though, if that's happened. But crazy atmosphere. I think we're just riding too high right now. MCDC is going to have them ready. I like the Lions to win and cover.
Scott?
I really think Detroit has better talent on every side of the ball. It's not even close. Tampa Bay is hot, but Detroit with their game plan, I think it's going to feel a lot closer than what the scoreboard is going to show, just because Tampa Bay's got Evans and Godwin that can deep strike quick you. All of a sudden, they got 14 points, and you wonder, where did that come from? But I think Detroit's going to pull away from this second half, and at the end, it's not going to be nearly as close as it felt through most of the game.
The dog is rooting for the Lions as well, just in case anybody was wondering. Carter, who you got?
Definitely rooting for the Lions. I've got Detroit winning this game, but 6.5 points, and the weakness of that Detroit defense being against the pass and the way Baker and Evans and all of them are cooking right now, I could see them backdoor covering. The crowd getting into the game and Hutchinson getting after Baker it could end up being a blowout, but I'm going to go ahead and take the points here, and Detroit's going to win, though.
All right. I've got Detroit here. I think this Lions defense is not the Philly defense. Should give Baker some more problems through that Aaron Glenn pass rush, especially from Hutch. Goff should continue playing comfortably at home and solidify a win. So I am going to take the Lions here to get to the NFC title game and cover. All right. The last of our divisional playoff matchups ends in the AFC as the 3-seed Kansas City Chiefs fly east to face off against the 2-seed Buffalo Bills, 6:30 p.m. at Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, airing on CBS. A rematch of the 2021 overtime shootout classic where the Chiefs came out on top 42-36. This is stunningly the first road playoff game of Patrick Mahomes' career. Mahomes isn't shaken by road games, though, as he is 38-11 in his career, the most wins by any quarterback in their first 50 road starts since 1950. He will have to protect the ball more, though, as he's thrown 8 picks in games away from Arrowhead this season. The Bills, meanwhile, have won 7 of their last 8 and are arguably the hottest team in the NFL right now. Kansas City has eliminated Buffalo in 2 of the last 3 years, so there's a lot of skin in this game for both franchises. And Josh Allen and the Bills overcome Andy Reid and the Chiefs. Buffalo comes into the game favored by 2.5. Scott, I'll throw it to you first.
I think this is going to be the closest game of this round of the playoffs. What one does well, the other one defends well, vice versa. They got star power at the quarterback position. I think the difference is going to be Josh Allen throwing Diggs. That just seems to be the one thing. Buffalo's discovered a running game. Not sure about the weather yet, but both of them have proven that they can play, whether it's cold weather or not. Snow is really not a determining factor here. But I love this game. I think it's going to be close throughout, back and forth, nail biter. Whoever has the ball last wins. I got to go with Buffalo for the win.
All right. Just to go back here very quickly, Taxis did pick Detroit to win in cover, and he picks Buffalo to win and cover in this game. Carter, I'll throw it to you.
That's so crazy. This is Mahomes' first road game in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I really wish this spread was 3, and I'm going to probably wait until I can get a 3 and bet Kansas City. But either way, I'm going to stick with Mahomes and Andy Reid. I think they're the better duo. This is a modern-day Manning and Brady rivalry right now, and Josh Allen's definitely due for one. But I think Kansas City has a better defense. They're coming into this a little more healthier. And I could see Snead locking down Diggs, and then they're going to have to work Kincaid or get James Cook going. To me, I'm just going to go with the better defense and Mahomes. So give me KC.
Jake?
Yeah, we mentioned it earlier that defense typically travels. I think this is like you just mentioned, I think Kansas City's defense is the huge thing here. I think they can shut down the Buffalo offense. And Andy Reid, he's going to have something schemed up here. Like I just think that they're just going to keep solidifying the dynasty. Like I don't think it ends here. I'm taking Kansas City to win outright.
All right. Yeah. Despite some of the offensive efficiencies this year, I just can't not capitalize on being able to take KC in a playoff game and get points. I think Rice is quickly becoming that extra weapon that Mahomes needs on offense. Couple that with Pacheco starting to look healthier, running the rock well. I am going to roll with the Chiefs here to set up a showdown in Baltimore against the Ravens. All right, guys, that wraps up our divisional round picks. We've got some very, very big games coming up this weekend as we very quickly approach the end of the season. Jake, you got any final thoughts here before we sign off?
No, you probably know my thoughts right now. The Lions make the playoffs. They are one game away, and it's Baker Mayfield standing in our way to a potential Jordan Love or Brock Purdy. So, I mean, it could be a lot worse. Let's put it that way. I will take what we're dealing with as opposed to a Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen situation. So obviously we're on the better side right now. And even if we go to San Francisco next week, if we were to win and they were to win, you're not really going to deal with shitty weather in San Francisco. So there's a lot of positive outlooks here. And I'll be unbearable next week. If we're playing in an NFC championship game, I don't even know if I'll be able to live through it. So if we make the Super Bowl, I'll just be dead. So I won't even get to witness it. So I won't even be able to see what would be something I've waited for forever.
Oh man. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. All right, guys. Well, we are running up on an hour and 40 minutes. So we're going to wrap up here. Carter, Scott.
Yeah, we probably should have split these to a college and an NFL. The college was pretty long, but it's
it is what it is. Sit back and listen and enjoy it. We only have a couple of these left this year. So, Again, Scott, Carter, thank you guys both for joining. Hopefully we can have you guys on next week. Hopefully Taxis will be able to jump back on here as well. And that is a wrap on NFL divisional round stuff. So for my co-host and fine citizen, Mr. Jacob Workman, Andrew Carter, Big Scott, Head Ninja, I appreciate you guys. Good luck at gambling, and we will see y'all next week.
See you, everyone.
See you.